How's it going, YouTube? Today we are going to discuss spell wrapping with multicast wands. And this is something that has been requested quite a bit, both by the YouTube community. I've seen a lot of you guys leave comments on it, and in my live stream as well. So today's explanation will, will be hard to understand if you have not watched some of my previous tutorial videos, because I have one where I talk about spell wrapping just on a regular spellcast wand of 1, and I have a video where I talk about like how to use chainsaws and all that. So if you're jumping into this video, you may want to watch those other ones, specifically the spell wrapping video. Otherwise, this may be very hard to follow. I've spawned in 4 wands that are identical in stats, except the spells / cast is different on each one of these. So all the other stats are identical, except for the spell / cast. So the spell / cast of this one is 1, spells / cast is 2, 3, and 4. So what this means is that this first one right here is like your normal wand. Like most of the wands you find in Noita are spells / cast 1, meaning they cast 1 spell at a time. These are the easiest to work with, and they make a lot of sense. They aren't too difficult to follow. However, with the spells / cast of 2, that's where people start to not understand what's going on. So let me show right here. With the first one, we fire it. You'll see on the board that it's showing 1 spark bolt at a time. But if we move it down to this wand here, that's firing 2 at a time, and we fire it, it's firing both spark bolts at the same time. So it's the equivalent of this, pretty much. Not exactly, but pretty much the same idea. So this would fire the same, except for it has the double on it, as this one would without the double. It's kind of like there's a hidden one right here, right? So if you were to put on, let's say we put on 4 spells onto this wand here that has a spell / cast of 2, it is the equivalent of being fired like this on this wand. Because when you fire it, it fires in 2 groups. And I'll even move this so it makes it a little more clear. So this group fires first, this group fires second. So if we move it on down to here, fire it the same, you'll see that it looks the same. The only difference is there's no doubles there because they don't need to be there. Same idea all the way down here. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I guess I'll show one more in case you're really like, wait, what is happening? So in case you want to be 100% what the heck is going on there. So in this one, it would fire this group of 3, and then it would fire this group of 3. Oops. It actually casts the second group so fast. Let me move. Let's see. What's something that we can use that doesn't speed up the wand too much? Actually, we'll do it like the cast delay is getting sped up so fast that it's actually just blazing through it. Here's what we'll do. Something like that. Still blazing through it pretty quick. That cast delay's too darn low. Oh, I know what we can do to slow down. We just add an add mana here. It should do a decent job. There we go. So you see, it's separate groups of 3. This is a modifier, so this is not considered in the group of 3. Like, it's 3 projectiles, right? Now, I'm going to explain the spell wrapping side of things now. Hopefully that laid a foundation for what the heck's going on. Obviously, quad, same idea. So it's 3 projectiles. So in this case, when I added a modifier, it's still this is 3, and then this is 3, and then this modifier, the reason I added it on there is because it adds cast delay, so I knew it'd slow down the wand a little bit so I could get a better look at the board here to show you guys. But yeah, still separate groups of 3. Now, I'm going to build out this wand using like a chainsaw wrapping on the first spot here. So this would be a pretty normal wand for me to use when I'm playing, and I don't have a lot of resources, and I want it to fire like a machine gun. So if you don't know how this one's firing off, again, go to the chainsaw video. This one will make sense. But The reason it's working this way, though, is because it's a spells / cast of 1. if we were to bring it down here, actually, I don't think we'll have too many issues right off the bat. I'll show you what I mean by that. Actually, no, we will run into an issue on this one. So, the problem for this wand right here is that whenever I fire this, if you look on the board, everything is firing off at one time. This is a single shot because it's firing a spell's cast of 2, which means it fires this and this at the same time. The double then fires off this, and then that's the end of it. It cannot wrap because this is part of the spell / cast of 2. You cannot wrap to itself. This and this are considered being fired at the exact same time. So if it was to wrap and grab this again, that would create an infinite loop, or potentially an infinite loop, because it's wrapping to the same thing that got it started. It needs to be in a separate group. So what we would do, or an example of what we could do, is we could add some kind of filler spell, right? Like so that there are 2 spells here. You can just throw on. It doesn't really matter. Spark bolts, dig blast. It doesn't really matter because we are trying to make it work very similar to how we just had it working. And we need to separate this chainsaw into a spell group of 2. So now when we fire it, it's back to firing very similarly to how we had it before, right? Because now it thinks that, okay, this is a grouping of 2, and then it can cast this group as its own separate thing. Now let's see how you would spell wrap without this double though. So if we were to now have this as a separate group, right, and we fire it, it'll fire, it'll actually hang up. Because what's happening here is when this double was still here, this double was actually grabbing this add mana and this chainsaw and placing it here. These are not placed inside of the trigger here. They're on the outside of it. So this allows it to still speed up the wand. If I were to remove this digging bolt and fire it now, what's going to happen is this add mana and this chainsaw will be placed inside of this trigger, and then this spark bolt will be the thing that's wrapped around to. This will be a very slow wand, and you can actually see it taking place. Because remember, I've told you guys in the past, if you put a chainsaw inside of a trigger, it removes the benefits of the cast delay reduction that a chainsaw has, because you cannot reduce cast delay on the wand from a spell inside of a trigger. It has to be on the outside of the trigger, like it was here. That's on the outside of the trigger because the digging bolt is in the trigger. So again, we'll have it like this. I'll fire it. You'll see that's actually pretty slow. Now let's move back the digging bolt as we had it, and this is originally how it looked. And that's why I was firing so fast. And we're gaining the benefits of the add mana twice, which I'm sure if you watch my past videos, that should come as no surprise. Now let's do some spell wrapping though without the double. So what we would do here if we were wanting to wrap is we would need something. So this is a spell cast of 2, right? And normally, whenever you had a double in like this scenario here, if you have a double here, it's going to wrap and it's going to grab this chainsaw and place it here, right? Because it's going to go here, here. But since this one has a built-in double, some people picture it like I was showing earlier. Remember I showed you how there were 2 separate groups? How there was a this one will fire very similarly to how this one fires. The difference between these 2 groups is that if I was to take away this digging bolt right here, this double is not going to have a spell here to grab. So it'll actually spell wrap and grab this double, which then grabs this chainsaw, which then grabs this. That's how it's going to fire off. So I'll show you on the board here, it firing off in that order. It's actually firing so fast, it's kind of hard to see. Hold on. Ugh. It's kind of impossible to get that first frame. It's literally a 0 frame first cast. Let me use the add mana to slow it down again so I can better show you. Actually, wait, that's not going to work because the chainsaw... Oh, well, it still should slow down a bit, yeah. See, it's separate groups. This is one group, and then the double casts this, which then wraps and pulls the whole set back over. So it's still 2 separate casts. Now, with this wand down here, and the way that we have it, the built-in double that's like hidden pretty much, spellcast of 2, does not wrap. they will not wrap on their own. You have to have something that causes the wand to wrap, something else like a modifier of some kind, for it to try to use the spell cast of 2. So in this case, this spell trigger grabs onto this digging bolt. So this trigger does not do any wrapping. It doesn't need to. The only thing that would cause this to wrap is if the spell / cast of 2 would wrap on its own, but it does not. So we have to give it a reason to wrap. So what we'll do is we will put something like light. This is a modifier. Now this light is looking for a spell, and it's part of this group of 2. Because remember, this is group number 1. This is a projectile. This is a projectile. And then this is group number 2. This is a projectile, and this projectile is inside of this one. So this is still considered one spell. There is no second spell. But there also, without this modifier, there is no way for it to wrap other than the built-in version, which the built-in multicast, which cannot wrap. So we put light here, and now what'll happen is it will grab whatever spell is here, and it will place it here. Which it would be like in this case. So this would not be the best because the spark bolt is what's being wrapped to here. So when we fire it, you'll see that the audio is kind of weird actually. Anyways, don't worry about that. You'll see that it's kind of hanging up. But if we were to swap the chainsaw over, now this light will grab this chainsaw and place it here with this add mana, and this will actually cause it to rapid fire. And let me go ahead and do a mod restart real quick. I don't know why the audio decided to bug out real quick here. So I don't know if this is making sense though. It's very odd, and I know I get requests for it all the time. It's just one of those though that if you've played around with the wand long enough, you'll start to wrap your mind around it, and it'll make more sense the more wands you do some of this funky wand crafting. But this board right here will help you immensely, because I make mistakes like this all the time where I'm like, why is this not rapid firing? This looks like it should rapid fire. But then I look at the board, and the board shows me the spark bolt is the last thing being cast, and I'm like, wait, a spark bolt is the last thing being cast. We want it to be a chainsaw. So then I'm like, oh, I'll move the chainsaw here. That way the chainsaw is the thing that gets wrapped to. And then the chainsaw will then make this go really fast. And then you're like, oh, that's making sense now. Because remember, chainsaws, they're amazing. I have a video on it. You know, it sucks because there's so many things that multicast wrapping to build badass wands. There's so many other mechanics that it depends on. So I keep having to be like, well, you need to reference this video or check out this video if you want this to make sense. Because if I went into detail explaining every interaction, this would be a very, very long video. Not only that, but it'd be really repetitive because it would go over a lot of information I've already gone over. Let me show you something though here with a spell cast of 3. I run into this problem all the time where I will have like a pretty good wand, but just not a ton of spells to fill in the multicast. And remember earlier I showed you how you could use a spark bolt to fill in the multicast. This is very important because whenever you run into these higher multicast wands, you may have a good enough resources to remove all the cast delay and all the recharge, but if you don't order it correctly, then it messes it up entirely. For example, this right here should be... Actually, I think we need to go like this. Yeah, this should be a badass wand, right? Fire it. But if we were to remove this projectile, watch. So things like spark bolts, extra spark bolts, and all that are very important to have. I mean, in this case, we have extra digging bolts and digging blasts, but it's not that uncommon that you only have maybe one digging bolt, one chainsaw, and spark trigger. That happens sometimes. So you're like, dang it, how do I get this spell cast of 3 to work really well? Like, you know, I've seen people mess around with all sorts of combos, throwing on tons of spells, trying to get it to work, when in reality, they need to just throw in a filler spell to help out the spell / cast of 3. So in this case, I wanted this to be a group of 3. So let's see, 1, 2, that's 3 projectiles. We got the chainsaw at the end, and then we just need to make it wrap. Because whenever it wraps, not only is it going to wrap to this spell, but it's actually going to complete the multicast of the wrap. So this is a spell / cast of 3. So whenever it wraps to here, not only is it going to grab the spark bolt, but it's actually going to grab the digging bolt and the chainsaw. The reason for that is because this modifier is now giving it a reason to wrap. Once it wraps, it will try to complete the multicast that is built into the wand. So I'll show you an example of this. So this is a group of 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 spells. If I were to put a Digging Blast here, now for the second group, this is 1, and there is no second projectile. So the spell light is allowing us to now wrap because it is a modifier. If we didn't have it, it would fire crappily. See? First group, second group. It fires this group, then it fires this. There is no reason for it to wrap other than the built-in multicast, which doesn't allow it. Now, if we place the light here, there is a reason to wrap. So if I was to even put this here like that, that'd probably be the ultimate order, because what will happen here is this is one projectile, light will wrap, grab this, which places this here, and it still has one of the multicasts is left, because 1, 2, and this is a spellcast of 3. So it'll actually wrap and place the chainsaw here. So this will be another machine gun wand, because the chainsaw ended up making it to the other side of the wand. So again, without the light, with the light. Let's say we misplaced the chainsaw off by 1 over to here, right? And let's fire it now. See how much of a difference it makes? It's because whenever it wraps using this light, it's placing this spark bolt over here with the add mana, of course. Then it's moving the digging bolt. This is 3 projectiles. 1 projectile, 2 projectiles, 3 projectiles. But because the chainsaw has those magical properties that reduces all cast delay, that hang up that's slowing us down here is the built-in cast delay of the wand plus the cast delay that the add mana is adding. That's what causes this wand to be inferior whenever you move it just slightly. So in this case, we want to bump that chainsaw over. We could even bump the chainsaw here. We just want it to that first group of 2 so that it gets caught in the spell wrapping. So remember, here's still good. Here's still good. You'll see that it's actually a slight delay here. If you're wondering where that delay comes from, whenever we shoot this one, it's because you got to keep in mind that this spark bolt is after the chainsaw. So it's wrapping, it's grabbing this. So up to this point, all cast delay is removed. Then it's wrapping and it's grabbing this one. This spark bolt has a 0.05 cast delay. So that's why there's a slight hesitation between each shot. It's that cast delay, because if the chainsaw's after it, it removes all cast delay before it. If the spark bolt's after it, that means that we still have to deal with that 0.05 cast delay. So that's why I tended to have the spark bolt before the chainsaw, because normally you do like to have the chainsaw up against the mana. That's because wands usually are spellcast of 1. So you want to make sure that mana is always attached to chainsaw, because the mana adds the cast delay, chainsaw instantly removes it. But since it's in a group of 3, then it's okay for the spark bolt to have the add mana, because we know the chainsaw will be coming in after it to remove all cast delay anyways, because they're in groups of 3. So then we fire this one, good to go. So this one's the best, this one's alright, and then this one is actually terrible. I'm not sure how helpful this is. I mean, some of the stuff makes sense in my head, and I don't know if I'm getting it out correctly, but I figured just to make sure that people are understanding it correctly, that's why I put 4 different versions. So I'm going to actually move on to this other version here, because I feel like even if I'm not explaining it very well, for the visual learners out there, they'll see me mixing up the combinations and everything, and it'll start to make sense for why it's happening, even if I don't verbally explain it, really well. So again, this one we're dealing with a quad, like 4 spells being cast at once. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put the chainsaw at the end of that group, and then if we put so if we cast this, it actually fires good enough on its own. The reason for that is because we have enough resources here. We have 1, 2, 3. These 3 right here are enough to remove all of the recharge, and because the chainsaw is at the end, it removes all of cast delay. So all of cast delay and all of recharge are removed, and it's all being fired in one frame. So this is good to go. Let's say we had put the chainsaw at the beginning and we moved these back to here. This would now not be the greatest, because chainsaw removes all cast delay, so it removed the 0.5. But then because these spells are after it, this one would add 0.02 cast delay, this one would add 0.02 cast delay, this one would add 0.17 cast delay, and this one would add 0.05. So now you get this big hang up. That's why the order of spells can be a pretty big deal. But again, put the chainsaw at the end. Money. All right, so let's go ahead though. Let's throw some stuff on there that isn't doing necessarily cast delay removal. So let's move this other spark bolt onto here. and let's fire this group. So if you're curious why this will slow down, even though we have the chainsaw at the end, you're saying, all right, well, all the cast is being removed. Why is this slow? That tells you, you're like thinking, a chainsaw at the end, it's slow, has to be recharged now. And that's because we removed the digging blast, which was removing 0.17 recharge. So the only things removing recharge now is this one right here, which removes 0.17, and this chainsaw right here is 0.17. So those two together, negative 0.34 recharge removal thanks to those two. So that leaves us with a little bit of recharge left on our wand. So if we were stuck with only these resources and we're like, dang it, how do we rapid fire? Well, we need to spell wrap to these spells. So the way we would do that is if you were to put some light right here, this light would cause this to reach to here. And remember, it's a spell cast of 4, so it needs to do all 4 of the projectiles. Because once we have started to wrap to the other side using this modifier, so again, like with if we were to put something just like a digging bolt here, not good. This is well, yeah, this is not good. And the reason that's not good is because this group right here, yes, all the recharge is removed here, but by adding in a second group, we now need the cast delay removed on this second group. Because remember, each spell group has its own cast delay. Each wand, the whole wand, has one set of recharge. So once it hits the end, it needs the recharge to be 0, which in this case, the recharge would be 0 with this. But by having a second group of spells, we added another group of cast delay. So, I mean, if you had a chainsaw to add to this, now this group right here would rapid fire. But let's pretend that we're only working off of this one chainsaw. So in your head, you should be saying, how do I get this chainsaw to be both in this group and in this group? So it's actually pretty simple. If we use light, which in this case we wouldn't even need, so we're going to fire this. But you wouldn't even need this, because there would be no reason to throw on a filler dig bolt, because you can just put the light here. The light will cast 4 and it will do all the wrapping for us, because it needs 4 projectiles once this modifier wraps to the other side. So this would machine gun pretty well. But let's say that we had a dig bolt here. So remember, this is a group of 4. This would now be 1. And then the light will show up and wrap to this dig, which will then, we need to finish the spell wrapping of 4. So 1, 2, this would be 3, this would be 4. We're not finishing with the chainsaw. This one is actually going to have some rough problems with it. So let me show you. Whenever you fire it. Yeah, not the greatest. But if we go ahead and, let's see, we can place our chainsaw. It could be, how far back did it go? To this spark bolt, right? So we can actually place the chainsaw here, here, or here, and it will rapid fire. Well, not fully rapid, I guess I should say. The reason for that is because by putting the chainsaw so early, we now have the cast delay there. So this one adds cast delay, this one adds cast delay. So if we move it to here, these two, the cast delay they're adding doesn't matter. This one will add 0.02, but this one will rapid fire probably pretty well. Here, it's still pretty good. It's just like every time I inch it over, it's adding on a little more cast delay. So the perfect spot was here. And what I wanted to show here, though, with this dig bolt, because it is taking up one of the 4 multicasts, it is only grabbing 3 of these. It is not grabbing the entire group. Watch this, though. Let's move the light to here. In this case, if you see it's set like this, you should say to yourself, it will not wrap. It should instantly, you should see that, because, like I said, the built-in multicast cannot do the wrapping. It can cause it to cast more projectiles, but it has to have something else has to take responsibility of forcing the wand to wrap to the spells up here. Hey, gotta follow, and I wasn't even streaming live. Where was I? Thank you, by the way, Yankee, for the love. I guess you'll see this if he watches the YouTube channel. So this light right here will not wrap. Watch this. See this? It's just casting on its own. It's because you have to give the responsibility of wrapping to something else. In this case, that's why the light being here is important, because a modifier is giving the responsibility of wrapping. And once it has begun to wrap, then the multicast will complete its job. So in this scenario, that's one of the ones that we had already showed off. That's very good. Does that make any sense? I hope so. I mean, I wish I had a chat right next to me, because then I can look at the chat and see, like, did I make sense? And half the time they're like, what the hell are you talking about? One more thing, though, I do want to show that is pretty interesting here. Watch this. So if I shoot this spark bolt trigger, so this trigger needs to grab a spell after it. And whenever it does grab this spell, it'll actually place it inside of the trigger. Watch this though. It's actually still a machine gun because this trigger has caused the wand to say, oh, it needs to spell wrap to place a spell in here. Well, once it has done that, once it has said, hey, I need to spell wrap, that means the responsibility of spell wrapping was not on the built-in multicast, right? Something else did it. So once the spell wrap begins, then the multicast kicks in, and all these other spells get moved across the way, and it's still a monster wand, just with a simple spark bolt trigger. I don't know, I could keep ranting on this forever. It's just I know I've been asked about it a lot lately, so I wanted to make sure people had a general idea of what the heck is going on with the multicast wands. The key takeaways is that the multicast that is built into the wand cannot do the wrapping. That beginning of the wrapping needs to be done by something else, and then the multicast, the spell/cast, will do its job and make sure that as many spells as possible can be cast that are necessary for the multicast. So hopefully that made sense. If it doesn't, feel free to post in the comments below. So far, you guys' feedback has been fantastic, and I feel like at least the general people are understanding. But also, I'm explaining completely different mechanics, so it helps whenever I get feedback, because it could be that one of my mechanics that I go into detail on or I rant on, it may not be the most clearly explained. It may be necessary to make another video or something like that. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, you guys. Deuces.